Now, but here's the thing, and I got to come back to this, and I can't say it enough, even though I don't say it all that much. MMT, whatever you want to call it, Mosler economics since 1993, has had the only understanding of the source of the price level. And that is the currency is a simple public monopoly. The dollars to pay taxes can only come from the government. And so the government is price setter. And what that means is that the price level is necessarily a function of prices paid by government when it spends, or collateral demanded when it lends, because that's sort of the same thing. But for purposes of this, we can say prices paid by government when it spends. And which is true of any monopolist. The government has the dollars that we need to pay the tax. They tell us the terms of exchange when they spend those dollars. Now, the government doesn't know that. So what they do is they say, well, we're going to, they think that the dollars come from the private sector. They have to get money from the private sector to spend, even though it's the other way around. But that's what they all believe. And therefore, they go out and they pay. They don't think there's any other option other than to pay market prices for everything they buy. And so what happens during these expansions is market prices start going up, which would normally be a one-time event that would reverse if the government did not then go out and pay those higher prices. When the government pays more for the same thing, it's doing nothing more than redefining its currency downward. Now, there's some exceptions, but just as a general rule. And let me give you an example that everybody can understand. So Elizabeth and I were in Pompeii. My wife and I were in Pompeii a couple of years ago. And the guide showed us the coins, that they found from 2,000 years ago, where people's pockets would have been, and in the shops and in their houses. And he said Pompeii was a very nice place to live because they had good public services, because they would collect these coins for taxes, and then they would pay the police for public safety, and they'd pay people to run the aqueducts and the sanitation to keep the streets clean every night. And so it was a nice place to live. So, you know me, I'm a little bit of a troublemaker. So I said, well, actually the way it worked was that the government would pay the people first, and then they would collect the coins. And he goes, no. Government collects the taxes, and then they pay the people. So I said, well, where did the coins come from? He says, well, the government made them. So I said, well, then how did anybody get the coins to pay the taxes? And he goes, so they spent them first, paid the people first, and then they collected them? I go, yeah, how else can it work? And he goes, no. And he walked away. He didn't want to hear it. Everybody in Pompeii knew that the government would pay the people first and then collect the coins, and that they all came from the government. Just like today, everybody knows the football stadium doesn't collect the tickets first and then sell them. They sell the tickets first and then collect them. It's just obvious. All right, but that knowledge has gotten lost. So now, and they all knew that all the coins that were in people's pockets or in shops, those were coins the government had paid out, they'd spent, and they hadn't collected them yet for taxes. That was the public debt. They had spent more than they collected, and that's why they were laying around in the streets after the volcano hit. There's no other way they could have gotten there, and everybody knew that. And they knew that that the government public debt was the money supply for Pompeii. If there wasn't enough cash and people wanted to go work more from the government, or even though they didn't need to pay taxes, because the economy needed cash, the government would go ahead and either hire more people, or if they already had more people than they wanted, they'd lower the tax. And they would spend enough to cover the need to pay taxes and the desire to save and have a money supply. And it was public policy, and it was a very nice place to live for a very long time. And nobody worried about, rhetoric like paying off the public debt. It was nonsense. Why would you pay off the money supply? So now the question is, what was the value of a coin? Okay, well, if the government said you got to work 1 day to earn 1 coin, that coin would the value would be 1 day's labor. So, somebody who wanted to raise chickens and not go work on the aqueducts might try and work out a deal with somebody who wanted to work on the aqueducts and didn't like raising chickens. And he would say, you know what, we each have to pay 5 coins a month in tax or something like that. I'll give you like 5 chickens for a coin or something, because I don't want to go work a day, to earn the coin, I'd rather trade you 5 chickens for the coin you go work, or tomatoes, or wash your clothes, or clean your house, or be your lawyer, or anything else. So everything got monetized, where it was all relative value based on the fact that you have to go work a day to earn the coin. Now, if the government had said, look, we're going to pay everybody, 2 coins a day instead of 1. All right, now how many chickens is that coin worth? Well, it's only worth 2.5 chickens. It's not worth 5 anymore, because you can get one in 4 hours instead of 8 hours. They're easier to get, and so you're not going to get as many chickens or tomatoes or legal services as you got before. Okay, the government has a monopoly. They have the coins. They decide the terms of exchange, and the market then, everything else reflects relative value to those coins. If they say you're only going to earn 1 coin a week, okay, well, now the coin is going to be worth 7 times 5, 35 chickens, right? Okay, the government's price setter. It doesn't matter what the economy does. Ultimately, they're going to come back to that. Now, if you were in a poker game in Pompeii at 3 in the morning and you lost and you needed a coin to pay, your debt, or you're going to get your hands broken, your thumbs broken, and the guy says, I want 10 chickens for the coin, and you say they're only worth 5, he says, he's got the hammer out, you might give him 10 chickens for that coin, So, yes, you're going to get deviations, but it's going to come back to that price. It's the same with New York City when they had subway tokens. The ride token was $2 because that's what the city said the coin was going to be, and that was the value of the coin. Now, yes, if you're running late for the subway and somebody had one, you might pay them $3. Or if you needed cash and you found 10 in your pocket, you might sell them for, I don't know, $15 just to get the money. But, day in, day out, ultimately, the value of the coin hovers right at the price that you have to pay to get them from the government, because they're needed on an ongoing basis, and they're the sole supplier. Well, the same is true of the U.S. dollar. Okay, and to give you an extreme example, if the U.S. government said, look, we're not going to pay a penny more this year than we did last year for anything, and market prices went up by $1, whatever, government spending would go from $4 trillion, well, the transfer payments, but government spending, let's say, just for this argument, government spending goes from $4 trillion to 0. Okay, that's a pretty big deflationary event. What's happening is the economy is now totally starved for the money it needs, the dollars it needs to pay taxes. People will have to sell things to get it. The prices will come down until somebody goes back to the government and sells things at the same price they did last year. Then the economy will have the money it needs to pay the tax. Now, I would not recommend that as public policy. It's probably better public policy to go ahead and pay the higher prices, have a 1 or 2% inflation, than it is to force that kind of deflation. But the understanding doesn't change. The dynamics are what they are. The government is price setter. It sets the terms of exchange when it spends its money, and that is the absolute indisputable explanation of the price level. Okay, it's a simple point of logic. It's true for any monopolist. They're price setters, period. If you've got the subway tokens, you can't say we're going to sell 100 million tokens this year, and we'll let the market decide the price. It would be chaotic and ridiculous. If you're the electric company, you don't say, okay, we're going to sell 3 billion kilowatts of power and let the market decide the price. It'd be chaotic and ridiculous. Well, our government decides, doesn't say, our government decides we're going to spend $4 trillion and we're going to pay market prices. And yes, it's chaotic and ridiculous. So, but all the other monopolists set price and let quantity adjust. Only the government sets quantity and lets price adjust with their currency. It's expected once you understand the dynamics of the system, and they're not hard to understand. Everybody in Pompeii understood it. I don't know why we can't understand it today.